So not only are two of the most iconic and popular clones of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, back, but they are under new identities and even getting ready to go to war with each other. Now as always, this is AJ at the Hero Informer, and let's get into it. So if you haven't picked up a Spider-Man comic in a while or know any of the lore, Ben Reilly and Kaine Parker are two clones of Spider-Man, but now they go by two entirely different personas, with Ben Reilly now being known as Chasm and Kaine being known as the Scarlet Spider. Now Kaine is more a brutal, more deadly, if you will, Spider-Man, not afraid to get his hands dirty and even murder, but of course he's trying to turn over a new leaf, so to speak. Where on the other hand, Ben Reilly has kind of lost his way. You see, he is no longer a hero in the traditional sense, because not only has he lost part of his memories, his mind, his sanity, but he is more inclined to do villainous things, which also coincides with his new look and costume, even granting him special powers such as a spider sense that can be used on the offensive, and also special energy webbing that can be made into constructs. All really cool and interesting stuff, depending on who you ask, of course. But where the story does pick up and start off, we see a group of kids in Queens going down to a supposed underground rave in an unknown area. And you would think Marvel's New York City is the last place you would want to be, going somewhere you don't know, especially with all the heroes, villains, superpowered freaks, and everything mutants going around. But of course, these teens go ahead anyway. And as they are down there trying to find what they're looking for, suddenly they hear something and turn around and see a giant beast. And this particular creature is known as Freak, who is a D-list Spider-Man villain, whose backstory is basically he was a drug addict who accidentally broke into Dr. Connor's labs and injected himself with a bunch of animal stem fluids, which he thought was crystal meth. But he is crazy and vulnerable and can regenerate, along with being hideous and pretty strong. And so with it looking not good for these kids, as no way can these random teenagers take on a creature like this, who has battled Spider-Man, they start to scream and scram for their lives. But it seems like their would-be doomed lives are saved as two people emerge down the stairway. And as these two silhouettes come in to save the day, one looks awfully a lot like Spider-Man, with even one of the kids going on to say, "Oh my gosh, it's you, Spider." But before he's able to even finish his sentence, everything gets revealed. Because no, this isn't your traditional Peter Parker Spider-Man, this is Chasm, the clone of Peter Parker Ben Reilly, along with his girlfriend, Hallows Eve. And so with these two heroes arriving on the scene, an all-out battle starts to break loose and start, with Hallows Eve going on to use her ability, which she can put on different types of masks to turn her into whatever the mask is and giving her the powers. And in this case, she puts on a mask of Frankenstein, giving her improved strength, durability, and all that jazz. And while she rushes in and starts to distract everyone, Chasm starts to do something, well, definitely villainous and not as heroic, as he goes to one of the downed kids, demanding that he gives over whatever cash and or credit cards he has, basically charging them to save their lives. And eventually, with all the chaos going on, the kid does accept and give in, giving him whatever he has, and only then does Ben Reilly jump into the battle to defeat many of these vermin. And no, it doesn't seem like Chasm and Hallows Eve were just patrolling around New York and happened to stumble in here. It seems like this was a premeditated thing. As Ben Reilly goes on to say, "Told ya, these kids were loaded." But while he's in the middle of continuing to fight these things, something interesting happens. As his spider sense starts to go off, as we see a silhouette of someone pry his hands over his head and literally tear it back, digging into his mind and doing something very peculiar, which will be revealed later on. But for now, Ben Reilly, seemingly unsure of what even just happened, gets right back into the battle, killing and snapping one of the vermin's neck. Moving over though inside of the same sewer system and not too far from where their battle was going on, we then pick up with another Spider-Man clone, but this time instead of it being Ben Reilly, it is the Scarlet Spider known as Kaine Parker. As of right now, he's on a mission to track down Chasm, or Ben Reilly, for questioning and whatever other motives he has. But while he is on his way there, he then starts to think of their shared history, going on to say that while they are not real brothers and just clones of Peter Parker, they still have their similarities, but also their differences, as finding out they were clones made Kaine a killer, where Ben Reilly thought it made him a hero. And eventually life took Ben down darker roads, as Ben Reilly right now isn't all there in his mind. His head is pretty messed up and he is missing core memories and parts that make him what he is, due to meddling from the Beyond Corporation and being mixed up with mutant drama and magic. He then goes on to say that his life keeps getting better while Ben Reilly's just keeps getting worse, but he still goes on to try to follow him, and as he is searching through the sewers, he is blindsided from behind by a bunch of rushing vermin. Because Kaine right here, he is one of the few Spider-Man that absolutely has no spider sense. You know, one of Spider-Man's most powerful and useful abilities he doesn't have. But he has a bunch of other cool abilities that might make up for it, or at least substitute. But as he recovers from the ambush, he then decides to go see what was making them so spooked, causing them to run away. And as he follows the trail, he finds something foul, the brutally maimed bodies of the Freak and other vermin, the ones that Ben Reilly murdered earlier. But it seems Kaine, this Scarlet Spider, also ran into the Freak before. As he goes on to say that the Freak, this creature, was strong. He left him bruised for a week, meaning Ben Reilly right now is stronger than he would usually have to be to leave the Freak mutilated like this. But while he is also here, he also sees the other children and kids webbed up to the ceiling by Ben Reilly. And as they are screaming and yelling for help, the police arrive. And instead of trying to stop and explain himself, which this entire scene looks pretty clear-cut and unexplainable, as the cops do have their weapons drawn, the Scarlet Spider then goes invisible, seeking an escape route instead. As because his suit that he has here isn't just a normal cloth suit, no, it's a specialized stealth suit that allows him to go invisible at will. Moving over to the duo, Chasm and Hallows Eve, we pick up as we see them at their hideout, in a church bell tower, as they go on to talk about their victory and spoils of war, if you will. But they also go on to talk about how different Ben has been acting. Because you see, Ben has came to an epiphany. He has given up his pursuit of trying to get his memories back from Peter Parker, and now is trying to accept who he is as his new version of Ben Reilly in his broken, twisted version of Chasm. But everything isn't as it seems, as Hallows Eve even remembers and goes on to mention how he was back at the subway tunnel. How he seemed to disappear for a second, like he wasn't even in control of his own body. Which of course this plot point just sets up another bad thing and situation that the Spider-Men in this series are going to have to deal with. Deep underground though, we finally see the main villain and the culprit behind everything so far, as this mysterious guy goes on to taunt and even beat on Mole Man, a C-list Fantastic Four villain, which isn't very important right now. Just know that this villain here is using his hideout resources and lair, because we find out this person is none other than Druig, an Eternal. Yes, you heard me right, an Eternal. The same species, if you will, that Thanos is, which is an odd choice for a Spider-Man villain and for a Spider-Man story, but of course we'll see how this all plays out. And the reason why he is here with Mole Man of all people is because he has recently experienced a humbling period, with Thanos himself coming and beating him up, reducing him to this low point that he is at now. And as he is trying to rebuild, he is trying to find every available resource that he can. And of course, with his main powers being in telepathy, he searched out for an easy, accessible mind to get his hands on. And of course, we saw it was Chasm, Ben Reilly, with his fractured and already twisted mind, making him an easy and susceptible target. Kaine, the Scarlet Spider, on the other hand, is busy still at the crime scene, placing spider trackers at the battle scene and bodies from earlier, using of course his invisibility and stealth suit tech. He is rightfully so playing the long game, as in the end he only wants to get to Ben Reilly and try to stop whatever this is going on. So for now, he swings home to his apartment to wait until his spider trackers go off so he can finally track down and meet Ben face to face. Speaking of Ben Reilly though, we see him in bed, but just then he is awakened out of nowhere with the same glowing red eyes and control from earlier, which of course we can only assume is the Eternal Druig's doing, as he goes on to manually take control of Ben Reilly to further whatever goals he has in mind. As Ben Reilly goes on to suit up, changing into his Chasm persona and swinging off into the unknown. But that unknown doesn't stay unknown for too long, as we see him arrive at the morgue. The morgue where the bodies of his victims, the creatures he have killed and brutally maimed, rest. And as he arrives, we see a mysterious voice speak to him in his head, telling him that it is a shame to let broken toys go to waste, don't you agree? Unfortunately, I don't detect any anatomical experience in that pockmarked brain of yours. No bother though, I'll walk you through the first steps and I'll let you improvise the rest. As he goes on to reach out to one of the bodies, seemingly using his abilities to do something to it, mutilate the corpses even further. And as he is done doing whatever he was forced to do, we then see him going back home as he is met with his worried girl, Hallows Eve, as they now know for sure something is up, with Ben Reilly not even knowing what is wrong with him and why does he keep doing and living the way he is. But from one spider to another, we then pick up back with Kaine. As I've mentioned before, he was waiting for this, waiting for his spider trackers to go off so he can finally get on Ben Reilly's trail. But like throughout this entire video, he has been one step behind, as when he gets to the morgue, everything is trashed and the employees are all strung up specifically with Ben Reilly's special webbing. And as he is still examining the crime scene, he then hears what Ben has done, as he turns and see a giant, strung together, mutilated zombie corpse of a creature, something that looks like it's straight out of Elden Ring as some sort of boss. And with this, we see the Scarlet Spider, Kaine, forced to fight and beat this thing solo, alone, with this creature looking like it is not going to go down without a massive fight. But of course, we will see that fight in the next issue as this one comes to a close. If you've enjoyed this video, leave a like or subscribe if you're new and like superheroes, comic breakdowns, versus battles, and everything in between. Now, of course, this is the Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.